Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with the One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. I am joined today by my illustrious co-founder of Single Cask Nation, Jason Neal, Patrick Harris, Johnston Yellen, who is nosing what I imagine I'm doing, some wonderful Kilchoman in his glass.
Very much so. It's always something I reach for. It's always something I find great comfort in. And I think for this very special Fisheel week that lands in our 15th anniversary month, it's been lovely to revisit a bottle that we did announce we will be opening later this year. You won't have to share this heel from Jason's bottle. We will be opening a fresh bottle of this at the Jubilee, October 15 in Chicago. And, so nice to always return to this.
It is such a fantastic bottle. And when I think about our beginnings, you know, in 2011, and then of course 2012 is when our first bottlings came out. Our first three, Arran, BenRiach, and Kilchoman.
Yeah.
And to date, our Kilchoman remains the only legally named, independently bottled Kilchoman out there. And it's such it's a part of our story that not only kicks off our story, it's like our Marvel, origin story here, but it's something that I'm so incredibly proud of. You don't normally get to say something like that as this tiny fledgling company that is really, it's important. I think it's really important and special.
Right. And not only do we have the original contact with Anthony Wills, who thankfully is still with us and still working away diligently, but we also got to work with John McClelland, right, who had just recently come over from Bunnahabhain. And, what an absolute joy and pleasure to work with him on the selection of casks that would ultimately get into Single Cask Nation. And I do want to reiterate something I said in a recent episode, which was John McClelland, Anthony Wills took us seriously as Single Cask Nation. Like, again, just a few jamokes, you, me, Seth, off in Scotland, off having a blast. And people were like, yeah, you're starting an independent bottling company? Yeah, choose from these casks over here. Are you serious? For real?
Yeah.
Maybe didn't think it would be our last Kilchoman, but what a first Kilchoman it was.
Yeah, that was something else to be taken seriously, like you said, as two jamokes. And I'm glad you brought up John McClelland's name. He is someone that we really got on with. And, it's funny when you said, here's Anthony Wills, who is still with us. And I'm like, wow, are you about to release some news that he's about to not be with us? What are you about to say? And then of course you bring up John McClelland, of blessed memory, who sadly left us way too early due to cancer. Fuck cancer. It really took him way too early.
Yeah, I tell you a little thing that I used to remember a couple of dearly departeds is there are Kilchoman bottles out in the world that have two signatures on them on the label. One is John McClelland, the other is Dr. Jim Swan.
Yes.
And having Kilchoman labels that are those two signatures, for a couple of guys who did so much for the industry, just reminds me of the path that Kilchoman took along the way. And obviously, Robin's signatures on a whole ton of these. Anthony moves into having his signature on a whole ton of these labels as well. But just to find that occasional, double act of John McClelland and Dr. Jim Swan it's just nice. It's just a nice bit of history, right? And remembers people who served the industry well.
Yeah. So the other thing about Kilchoman that I want to mention here, obviously it's part of our origin story. But from a personal perspective, it's part of my whiskey origin story. I got into whiskey I started getting into whiskey sometime around late 2005, early 2006, just dabbling, but started getting really geeky about it sometime around 2007. And that's when I discovered Kilchoman. And it was so nice to be able to track Kilchoman's ascendancy, right? And just follow them as they grew from like toddlers to teenagers to,
For sure.
Here they are as they're 21 years old this year. Come this December, they'll be 21 years old. And so it's been nice as someone who got into it in 2005 and geeky in 2007 to track this. I say this quite often in tastings. People quite often have favorite distilleries. They say Lagavulin, Bowmore, Macallan or what have you, but no one can say, "Oh, I was tracking them when they started 200 years ago." You didn't have that luxury, and no one had that geeky sort of approach to it. Nowadays we do have that more geeky kind of approach to it, where So anyway, for a number of reasons, Kilchoman has an incredibly special place in my heart.
Well, and pretty wild when you start to put it out there like that. So what do we have? 1995, we've got the opening of Arran, the Locranza Distillery, as it's now referred to. And then 96, I begin my whiskey journey, right? For you, Kilchoman, 2005, right around that time, you're starting your whiskey journey. And we opened up this company with those two distilleries. And I think that tells you, back for 2011 when we were having a lot of the negotiations and the conversations, but it shows you where those distilleries wanted to go. It shows you how they wanted to be represented. And again, for them to put their trust in you, me, Single Cask Nation, phenomenal. And then again, back to another recent episode with Sam Filmus, where Sam, as the importer Impex, put his trust in us and his faith in us to then go out. And we've talked about this plenty of times, but we would pour OB Arran and Kilchoman next to our IB Arran and Kilchoman and tell the story and share the love. And both of them were so well received and so well regarded. It was such a pleasure, a real pleasure. Can't wait to do a little bit more of that later this year with some others, but that's a story for another day.
Indeed. So listen, listeners, in honor of our 15th anniversary, we thought it would be good to bring back an older episode from our time in 2019. This was our first and only visit to Fagile, the Festival of Islay. And this is where Jess is right now as we're recording it.
Indeed.
And we had a sit down with Anthony Wills, and I remember this was season 3, episode 10, and we referred to this episode as a no holds barred conversation with Anthony Wills. Like, this is a guy who speaks his mind and doesn't really have a filter. And so we thought, here we are. It's our 15th anniversary. Kilchoman was part of our very beginnings. It's during the phase. Why not put these puzzle pieces together and release one of our favorite conversations with one of our, most favorite people in the industry, and re-release it for people who may have missed it.
Well, and as much as the interview itself was fantastic, the conversation was fantastic, spending time with Anthony is always fantastic. Keep in mind that while we were inside doing the heavy lifting of all this interviewing, Jess, Chris, and Andreas were in the little courtyard in brilliant sunshine, destroying a bottle of what was then the new Kilchoman STR release. So I always think of that in this particular moment.
I think that we sat down with Anthony for maybe an hour and 10 minutes. And, maybe trimmed that conversation down to an hour or so, whatever the time was. I forget what it was. Anyway, but during that time, killing is the proper term. They took that bottle down to at least half of its contents amongst the three of them. That's why I said at least. I said at least.
Oh,
at
beyond
least.
that. I remember there being a heel for you and I to taste from, and we'd left them with the full bottle. It was their bottle. They didn't drink our whiskey, but they were very kind to leave us a little heel so we could taste it.
That was great whiskey. One of my favorite releases from them. Right?
Yeah, really good. Really good. All right. Without further ado.
Cheers to Kilchoman. Cheers to Anthony. And cheers to you, dear listeners.
Yeah. Happy Fishil, wherever you find yourself.
Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. I'm joined today, and I'm joined as always by my good friend, my business partner, my buddy, Mr. Jason Johnston Yellen. Hi there, Jason Johnston Yellen.
Hi there, Joshua Hatton.
Oh, you missed my middle name.
With you.
You missed my middle name.
Matthew.
Nope.
Luke.
Nope.
Paul. John.
Nope.
Zappa.
Oh, I wish. Yeah, my middle name is not biblical.
Moses.
You're getting close.
Moshe.
It's there's an M.
If I guess your name, I get your firstborn.
No, you don't get my firstborn. That's not how things work.
That's how it worked in Rumpelstiltskin.
Is that how? Oh, that is how it worked in Rumpelstiltskin.
Is your middle name Rumpelstiltskin?
Fuck. Okay, you get my firstborn.
A deal's a deal. If only your mother had thought of that when she named you back in the day.
Is that the one with the golden thread?
It is, yeah.
It is, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, my daughter can turn straw into gold. Mm-hmm. And Rumpelstiltskin assists her in that. But, like everything in this life, it comes at a price.
It does. It's a lesson as old as time.
Is your middle name Mr. T?
I pity the fool who thinks that it's Mr. T.
Joshua, fool. Mr. T. Hatton.
It's actually the French. It's actually Monsieur T. Monsieur T.
Is it? I don't know.
I can't believe we're still doing this.
Well, my wife said this to me the other day. She said, "Jason, you're really competitive," and I said, "No, I'm not." I'll race you and see who's competitive. And so there's a part of me wants to guess it because I know you've told me at some point. Is it Michael?
I will tell you, someone who was a king had this name.
Is it David?
No, it starts with an M, remember?
George. This is when people tend to write in and say, were you drunk when you recorded the intro?
Nope.
This is what it's like when your kids don't bother you during summer vacation. You have fun. You enjoy yourself. It's quite lovely.
So this particular king...
Oh, I know what it is. I know your middle name.
Yeah.
I know your middle name. Because it always strikes me, and I've said this to you before, as a very un-American name. I can't think of any Americans I know who have this name.
Yeah.
Morrissey. Panic on the streets of London. No, it's Martin. Your middle name is Martin.
It's Martin.
Yeah. I literally don't know another American who has Martin as their first name, Martin as their middle name. I even guarantee you we don't have any nation members, and we're totaling about 5,000 nation members right now. I don't think we have a nation member with the first name Martin.
Martin Luther King was an American.
That's very true. That's arguably the greatest American.
He's up there. There's no doubt about it.
No doubt. Yeah, he's the only... Yeah. Did people stop calling their kids Martin after his...
There was a gentleman at my tasting last night named Martin Coburn. Huh. There you go. That's two great Americans named
Is that Martin a member of the nation?
He is, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm 0 for 2 on my observations on that one then. One person has completely annihilated my observations. Speaking of, how was the group trip to HQ?
Right. So for those that are not aware, we did our first ever Single Cask Nation headquarters tasting. Now, the fact of the matter is we really don't have a headquarters. You have your home office.
And only 50% of ownership were there.
Exactly. You have your home office. I have my home office. But my good friend and nation member and my token Finn friend, Kimmo Pironen, has an office.
Also known as Martin.
We used his office and we did an epic tasting where basically what I did is I took some of our oldest bottlings and put them next to casks we said no to. So I had our
smart way to do it.
Right. I had our BenRiach 17 that I put up against. We had a peated port BenRiach that they gave us, a Sauterne one, and then a cognac BenRiach. And got to show people why we chose our 17-year-old. I did the same with, I opened up my bottle. We had a Glenglassa Octave that we don't really talk about much. It was something that we laid down back in 2012. And it was with the intention of once it's ready to bottle, we would gift it to the people who are our founding members, who were there from the very beginning, that continued to support us. We had maybe 37 bottles, and I decided to open mine up, and I got to compare that next to some 4 and 5-year-old. No, I think it was just 4-year-old Glenglassa samples that we'd gotten, all from Refill Hoggy, and it just showed why we would say no to this, and why we'd say yes to this other thing, or why this is a complete whiskey and that one wasn't. So it was good. We had about 16, 17 people there. It's a small room, so we had to cap it. And it was just a fun night. Broke out the Great Isle of Swim bottle. Oh, can I toss in a little bit of news here?
Yeah, we're not going to do a news section later, so throw in a little one.
So one of the things that I did, and I did not share this in the Facebook invite, but you and I are doing another collaboration with Hello from the Magic Tavern. And what we did is we took we've been sitting on a bunch of bourbon casks for a while now, and I married up 2 different versions, 4 casks here and 4 casks there. And I let this group decide which one we're going to bottle.
How did that go? Everybody got the winner? It
was tough. You know why? Because at first, it was an even split. It was 50-50. And thankfully, one person showed up late, and he gave the final decision. So, but both were tasty. Like both were very different from one another. And, as we talked about before, what we do when we have done this in the past, and we did it at Westland, we pick things that we would bottle no matter what, because we love it. And then we put it in front of people and say, pick your favorite, majority wins. And there were some people that were like, nope, the first one was the best one. And some people said the second one was the best one. In the end, they all said, oh, I'm going to drink it either way. Both were good whiskey. Both were a good whiskey, but I preferred that one over this one. So it was good fun. And it was good to do a tasting that was less than a mile from my house. I absolutely love that. Yep.
Yeah, I think I get to do a few more of those types of events than you do. But they're They're nice. I did one time 3 streets from my house.
It's within stumbling distance.
Absolutely. Yep. It was a very short zigzag path home.
And I'll tell you what, we had people driving down from Massachusetts, 2-3 hour drive, depending on traffic. We had another guy, this guy with the name of Travis, and his wife. They drove up from Florida specifically for this tasting.
Whoa.
Yeah. It was pretty damn wild. So
that's a schlep.
It's a schlep. So yeah, so we'll do it again, and hopefully you will be able to join us this time. Hopefully,
if we don't do it in the summer, I can be there.
Yeah. Okay, next summer it is.
Perfect. See you there, or not. So you, believe it or not, made what I consider a wonderful little seg into our interview for the day.
I didn't realize I did that. Can you explain?
I know, this is why I'm having fun pointing this out to you, as you returned us back to the early days of Single Cask Nation, and you talk about the BenRiach that we selected. With that BenRiach, we selected our 4-year-old Kilchoman.
That is very true.
And the subject of today's interview is the man who sold us that very cask.
Yeah, Anthony Wills, the good Anthony
wonderful.
Wills.
Yeah, wonderful human being.
Yeah.
Who won't sell us another one, but here we are.
Yeah, he remains a wonderful human being. Regardless, we won't hold that against him. Can't hold that against him. But you know what's interesting is we've had James Wills on the podcast twice before.
Exactly.
And obviously we wanted to have a conversation with Anthony, but didn't know what to talk about because both of the James Wills episodes, which I urge, if you haven't listened to it, I urge everybody to go back and listen to them. They're very in-depth conversations where we're talking about a multitude of things that are Kilchoman. And James was always very open to talking about the ins and outs of Kilchoman. And we get into this conversation not necessarily knowing what we're going to talk about, but we ended up having about a good 45-minute conversation. We discussed stuff we've never discussed with James. And Anthony was, what I thought was amazing is we said, "Hi, Anthony, here's a 15-word question. What do you think about that?" And he throws a 10-minute answer back at us. And he's so open, and I think you used the word effusive before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was very detailed answers, very forthcoming, very honest.
Yeah.
And that's one of the aspects that I was aware of going into the interview was, here we are as One Nation Under Whiskey talking Kilchoman again. And what could we hear from Anthony that wouldn't just be a rehashing of what our listeners had heard from James?
Yeah.
And really, we got the perspective of the company owner, the brand owner, the distillery owner. And so even some areas where James was a younger fella, hadn't quite lived the experience.
Yeah.
Anthony gave it to us firsthand. And I thought that was very welcome. And really, in thinking back to the conversation that we had with Anthony, the only thing that I even think we've previously covered with James and on the podcast is the second still house and how it will allow them to dedicate a set of stills to 100% Isla.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit with Anthony about what older stocks might look like for Kilchoman. And that's something we covered with James.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Certainly back when the 12-year-old club release hadn't yet been made available.
Yeah, good point. Yep.
So aside from those couple of areas, I really think Anthony gave us a brand new perspective on Kilchoman and running the business of Kilchoman.
Yeah.
And growing the business of Kilchoman.
Yeah. Yep.
So I was very thankful for all those new angles from Anthony.
As was I, and what I'm thankful for, and what I found so refreshing was, and I just mentioned it a minute ago, was how open and honest he was. There was nothing that we would have or could have asked that he would say, nope, I can't talk to that, or I won't talk to that. He said, no, let's hear, good question. Here's my answer. And you don't always get that. And we, depending on who the subject is, there's some things we may not want to ask them, or, topics that, we might avoid. We don't do that often, but anyway, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a refreshing conversation where you can say, tell me about X, and he tells you about X, and he throws Y and Z in there for you just for good measure.
Well, and that's why, I think it shows the type of conversation that we were having. Somewhere towards the end of our questioning, I even said to him, so let's go back to the beginning. What would you have done differently? Like, what a question to ask somebody who's been busting their hump on their brand, their company, their distillery for 15 years.
Yeah, right.
And longer than that. I'm only going back to 2004. Clearly, he was doing due diligence before that as well. And having the audacity to say, so what would you have done differently? And without missing a beat, he answered the question.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
it was really wonderful.
Some people would say, I don't have to answer this. Or, let's move on. Sometimes beginnings can be embarrassing. He even talks about it. He said, we made some really dumb financial decisions where in the end we tried to take shortcuts, but in the end it cost us more money. We didn't have the guidance. And likely didn't even know where to look for that guidance. And not everybody would be willing to just say, you know what? We were young, we were green, we were just figuring this stuff out. Thank God we had the help of Dr. Jim Swan. But other than that, we were kind of on our own. Yeah. Learning as you go along, and then making yourself a resource for those who would come behind you. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to the character of the man, that he has made himself available to speak to those who would want to follow in his footsteps. And normally his advice is, don't do it. Don't follow in my footsteps. But if you can't be persuaded otherwise, here's some things to be careful with. So, no, he's a solid whiskey guy, and generous with his time with us, and we thank him for that. And I'm excited to have another representation of Kilchoman on the podcast. And one of the beautiful things about this conversation was the fact that you and I were together with Anthony on Isla at the distillery just a couple days before Fagile. And when we were able to do that, when we're traveling together, interviewing people together, it makes my life so much easier, because I could just take that conversation and drop it in here without some of the extra editing that goes on. And I thought the conversation alone, there's really no need for me to cut this up for you and I to hop in and out of it, because it was question, answer, have a bit of conversation, and it's all there. And so if you agree, I'm just going to drop it in here, and then you and I will have a bit of conversation afterward.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to hand the floor over to the three of us chatting in the new visitor centre before it's even been opened.
Oh, so one thing I need to mention to people, and you may hear it here and there, Anthony seemed to have a little bit of a tickle in his throat, and there may be a bit of coughing here and there. I tried to edit out as much as I could. You will also hear some steel work going on, some sawing and all sorts of things. They were busy building all of their awnings and basically anything, what do they call those things? Like canopies to protect people from the rain. Because apparently on Kilchoman Day, which is the Thursday during Fagile, it was going to be pissing down that whole day. So they were setting up for that Thursday.
Well, I think that was maybe what was giving Anthony that little tickle, was there was a bit of dust in the air. And it's not every day you go to Isla and experience a bit of dust in the air. Normally the rain is keeping that dust where it belongs. And so I think, they were just working up a little zone. Plus we were in the new cafe, which is still getting a little bit of work done on the end of it. But I trust your editing, Joshua. I think you'll make this an easy listen for our dear, dear listeners.
Do you think what was happening is he and us, that we were breathing in aluminum powder?
Without any shadow of a doubt. And asbestos.
And asbestos. Wow. I'm not going to lie to you. I think there's a good chance.
You didn't see the big sign outside that said free asbestos here?
Oh, I thought that was Abe Estos. It was like free Abe Estos, who's, as you know, he's a political figure that's imprisoned right now who needs to be freed. And his sister, do you know his sister, Abby? Abby something. Abby Normal?
Would you mind telling me whose brain I did put in?
And you won't be angry?
I will not be angry.
Abby someone.
Abby someone. Abby who?
Abby Normal.
Abby Normal.
I'm almost sure that was the name.
What are you talking about?
Come on, young Frankenstein. I don't know. Just you know what I'm talking
Let's
about.
Let's go to the interview.
So the interesting thing is we've had James on the podcast twice.
Yeah.
And he has answered most of the questions. But I have a new question for you to kick it off. and it's tied a bit to what we have in our glass, which is the STR cask. And coming from the perspective of someone who's been drinking Kilchoman, I think I started drinking it since 2009-ish, anywhere, somewhere around there. As of late, and by as of late, I would say the past 5-6 or so years, I think of your annual releases where you have various casks. You did the Sauterne, you did the Sauterne finish, you did Madeira, and so on. And now you have this STR cask. And we talked before in the warehouse, you have some Pinot Charente casks coming in, some Calvados, etc. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, are you dabbling with these various casks to try to find? Is Kilchoman still finding its way through the lens of these various casks? Are you just having a good bit of fun?
I think it's a combination of all those things. I think as a distiller, we know it works well in ex-bourbon casks and ex-sherry casks, and has done for many, many years. And I think nowadays it's looking to innovate a bit more, and whereas a lot of distilleries have done finishes and have done them successfully for a number of years, I accept that works well, but wanted to maybe find a way of doing full maturation term for these other sort of experimental cask types that we've used. And I think it's all about showcasing Kilchoman in a different light, different characters coming through from the casks that they've been matured in. And I think we're fortunate that our spirit character, the sort of sweetness and the fruitiness and how clean and fresh it is, seems to work because of the peaty, smoky style and the strong flavors that come through. They seem to work well in these other spirit casks. I think it's something that will just continue. We think that some have worked better than others. And some that I didn't think worked quite so well, people have been saying great things about. So I think we're always going to continue that journey, and it's not about us trying to find a particular cask type that we think, right, we're going to stick everything into that cask type. Right. I think it's about showcasing Kilchoman in various different styles, and it's about getting people to start that discussion about Kilchoman in different styles. And I think it's important for a small distillery like ours to be doing that. Innovation is all part of that process. We have all the control we'd want here now in terms of the farm and growing the barley and different peating varieties and now we're looking at yeast varieties and different barley strains and all these things. I think just open discussion and hopefully get people talking about Kilchoman a bit more. I think that's what it is. The SCR cask matured was very much something that Jim Swan, who's my consultant and great mate, who sadly died a few years ago, who helped me put all our cask maturation together, helped me sort of get the cut points where we wanted them, the whole design of the distillery. And this is very much his making. The STR cask is what he came up with the innovation. And now it's being used by a number of distilleries, new distilleries, very successfully. And, this release that we've just done has worked incredibly well, I think. I mean, very well balanced, sort of summer fruits and berries, but has that Kilchoman character in it as well.
What's the difference between STR and DCHAR rechar?
Not a lot. I think
proprietary trademark.
I think it's just them coming up with their own term for it. I mean, shaved, toasted, recharred is not dissimilar to what you've just described.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think there is different forms that you do it. A light. And then a heavy, and what wood chips you use in the recharring. I think
that's interesting.
I think wood chips are definitely something that will change the characteristics of what you use, and how heavily you do it. How heavily you shave it, and how heavily you. I think it's everybody has their secret way of doing it. So even the cooperage where I bought these from, where I was trying desperately hard for them to give me all the information, they wouldn't.
What was the bit that they wouldn't give you?
The depth of charring and shaving and what wood. They just said wood chips.
Wood chips.
It's ex-red wine casks. Where from? They weren't going to say particularly. I mean, I think there are various cooperages that are now doing this, and I know 2 or 3 have offered me casks. We've used EAS because Jim Swan was very closely connected with them. And we've been pleased with the casks we get from them. I think the issue now is the more information that we want, the less they're giving us. And I think that's probably not understanding how much more information our consumers are wanting, how much more educated the consumer is with single malt and maturation. And we know that if you put a Chateau on the label, like all the first growth clarets and Chateau Yquem from Sauternes, then you're going to be able to promote and sell the product on the back of that. I think for me, that's not how it should be, because I think it's the whiskey that should be predominantly how well the whiskey has come together in a Chateau Lafite cask or whatever it is. I think it's wrong to promote it on the back of a well-known red wine. But I think that Amarone and
Sassicaia,
all these wonderful names, red wine casks, are hitting the shelves, and suddenly they're becoming very popular. It is something that everyone's looking at a bit more closely. I think it's fun for the consumer because it gives them all sorts of different characteristics coming from the same distillery. Everyone's doing it now, to be honest, and I think now it's about innovating a bit more. I think the Scotch whisky industry has tended to be quite sort of narrow-minded, but there's very good reason for that. I mean, the Scotch whisky industry, driven by the big guys, have been hugely successful. What they've done, why would you change what you're doing if it's working well? I think it's only in the last 15 years that independent distillers have come into the game, independent bottlers have been successful, and I think there's now room for everybody in that respect. So you're always looking at a different angle to promote your particular distillery brand, and I think that's what we're all looking to do. And either journalists, Dave Broom is one that will be pushing for more innovation. He is very supportive of any distiller that's innovative. It doesn't just have to be whiskey; it can be any spirit in the world. So I think that's what the name of the game is, because I think consumers are now very knowledgeable and they're looking for innovation more and more.
So as you're talking about innovation, when we were in the still house, you started to talk about your own experiments being innovative with yeast.
Took the words out of my mouth.
I could tell. And one of the things that our listeners always want to know more about, and when we've brought tours over to Scotland, they've always asked questions about, is yeast. One of the driving forces for us in the United States is craft brewers who are not just using different barleys in their products, but also using different yeasts. Listening to you in the still house today, you were quite effusive in your, ideas about innovation. Tell us what you know about yeast and what have you seen in your now time experimenting with that yeast at Kilchoman.
I think, like everybody that builds a new distillery, you tend to go for... You don't experiment that much. You're looking for a consistent character of spirit, and that's exactly what we did. Jim Swan said that, Maori distiller's yeast would probably give us a more floral note, a clean, fresh floral note. And we stuck with it, really, to be honest with you. It's a yeast variety that a lot of the distillers have used. And so we used that. We're very happy with it. But I think, what do I know about yeast? Well, not a lot, but I do know that yeast is one of the areas that you can experiment a lot more than you can with wood maturation or how you make your single malt. It has to be from barley and it has to be from stills. And
okay.
So you can use different varieties and different strains of yeast that you can have from you can actually do it yourself. I think we have experimented a little bit, but only just purely of interest. We tried different strains of yeast. We've tried dried yeast. And we tried a different strain of pressed yeast, and we didn't. The pressed yeast results weren't as good as far as we were concerned. It left a rather bitter note in the spirit. But yeast is going to play a much bigger part than everyone likes to think. And I think yeast is something that no one really talks about. It's there to do a job. And I don't think anybody really considers that it will have a impact on the character of the spirit, but it does. So we have done in the last week or two, and on our open day, Dave Broomer and I are doing a masterclass discussing spirit from different yeast varieties. 3 different samples from our Maori, from a Kerry yeast, which is pressed yeast, Kerry M and Kerry MX. And we're doing a Maori one, we're doing a Kerry M, a Kerry MX, and then we're doing a Maori combined with Kerry M. And I haven't actually tasted them yet, but the boys say that there is a marked difference. And I think it's pretty obvious. Yeast, if you yeast in making bread, you get different characters of bread. So I think it's not very sexy to talk about yeast. And it's a function of distilling whiskey, and you just chuck it in there and away it goes. I now want to try and look at different strains, and I know that smaller distilleries are doing that, and America is a place that it's being done a lot. In the UK and in Scotland, probably not, and it's not something we talk about very much. It's about fermentation time. It's about just getting consistency that you're looking for.
Yeah, and yield.
And yield is, well, I think it's unfair to say that, all the big distilleries are driven just by yield. But of course, I think at the end of the day, that's what drives the industry. So the variety of barley and the yeast you use, if it produces the results you're wanting in terms of litres per tonne of malt, that's what you're going to use. But maybe the smaller distillers are looking at not so much, they're not so driven by economies of scale and keeping everything down to the pounds, shillings and pence.
Well, that was one of the things I was curious about for you, is what would be the balance between yield and taste? If you fell in love with a yeast that gave you a great Kilchoman spirit, but your yield had dropped so significantly, would you then have to walk away from that yeast to find something that gave you more balance between flavour and yield?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think you have to strike a balance, but we've with our own barley that we malt here, our yields are less, or have been. They are much improved now because we've got better at looking after our malt during the malting process. So, from starting on at 350 litres per tonne, or even less than that on occasions, we're now up at 380, 390, and sometimes we're even 400. So
that's great.
Well
and
done.
that's about efficiency. But am I driven by efficiency? No. So if we found a yeast that worked really well, we might not use it all the time, but we would certainly do a batch of it to just showcase what can happen with a different yeast variety. But I think you're always going to be looking at the cost implications over time, and you just have to get the balance right.
Brilliant.
Does having that the second still house installed, does that help you play around a bit more? Just give you that flexibility that you didn't have before?
Undoubtedly. I mean, I think it'll now give us the options to put all our 100% Islay through the one still house. We can experiment with more experimentation with peating varieties, peating types, and length of peating, barley varieties, which we're experimenting with now, and yeast varieties. But that's the same on either side. So it gives us a huge amount of flexibility in how we now move forward to showcase what we can do.
Yeah. When we were going through the warehouse earlier, we were tasting some ex-bourbon, some nice older 100% Islay as well. And we tasted a Madeira finish that you said, oof, I think this may have spent a bit too long in the cask. And someone in our group really liked it. I think it was Andreas, the guy from Finland. And just as you're thinking about your various markets, right, do you have certain casks, certain types that this will do well for Germany, this will do well for the US, etc.?
Not as a whole. I think we know that different styles suit different markets. It's difficult for us as a small distillery to tailor everything for certain markets, but you'll be surprised that what I might think isn't right or what I think is fantastic. Various people will argue that I'm wrong, but then it's a very personal thing. I think what we've got to do is be able to showcase all sorts of different styles and let the consumer or the distributor or the retailer decide. And I don't think we can do any more than that. And I think that's why if I said to you, well, I'm going to fill everything into bourbon because I prefer bourbon cask maturation, and I do. But that's not what it's about. Sherry plays a very important part. Asia, for instance, it's all sherry. Sweeter the better, darker the better. So we have to get a balance of all different cask maturation in the warehouse. And it surprises me sometimes when people do say they like that. But then, that's what whiskey generates an argument about, because there isn't a one-fits-all style.
Right.
And I think that's what is superb about the Scotch whiskey industry, whiskey in general, is that there's something out there for everybody's style and character and their favourite dram. And they're all different, even here on Islay. We're all producing, most of the time, a peated style and smoky, and we're all different. So I think that's where we benefit from having such a huge range of characteristics from whiskey in general.
Sure.
As you're out in the markets and you're pouring different whiskies and finishes and maturation, is there anything that's surprising you? What I'm thinking is, yesterday we were at a warehouse tasting with Ian MacArthur, aka Pinky, and he was talking about he's now seeing a slowdown or a reduced number of people who are loving the sherry matured Lagavulins, and now seeing a rise in those loving the bourbon matured Lagavulins. And one thing for Josh and I, when we got into this, is we knew sherry matured sold really well, and we would drink a lot of bourbon matured. And you just said a moment ago, you kind of prefer bourbon matured. And so I love the fact that we're seeing this pendulum swing back towards bourbon matured. And I'm somewhat surprised that people are swinging back to it, because sherry did seem to be so king in maturation. Is there anything that's surprising you as you're meeting people, talking to people, and seeing markets?
Well, I think the whiskey enthusiast, the sort of experienced whiskey lover, would probably steer towards the bourbon maturation style, because and the sherry is is more approachable. So if you're not such an experienced whiskey drinker, you might tend to steer yourself towards that.
Yeah.
To put it bluntly, bourbon, there's no hiding place for the spirit. And whereas in sherry there is. With our particular style here on Islay, it's more difficult to work with sherry because the peat and smoke and the coastal characteristics and the sherry notes tend to fight against each other quite a lot. And sulfur plays a part. All these things, and you've got to try and work your way through when you're selecting the cask to make a vatting, and it can be it's much trickier than doing a straight bourbon vatting because they all tend to be similar in character and style. Not the same, but because that makes it all more interesting. But to me, bourbon, you just got a cleaner style, and the distillery characteristics shine through, whereas might be obscured slightly in sherry. They're not always. There's some wonderful sherry Islay whiskies, and I've been proud of some of the ones we've done, but maybe a bourbon sherry sort of vatting is a balance that works. So you especially the young Kilchomans, if you just put a little bit of sherry in them, it dampens some of the sort of spirit note or the vibrancy that you might want, not obscure, but just sort of to dampen down a bit.
Sure.
And therefore that seems to work quite well.
Yeah. Sounds like you're describing the success of Macro Bay.
Yeah, I mean, it's staggering that something so young has certainly caught the imagination of people. It's been fortunate for us because it's allowed us to have enough stock of our older. Otherwise, we might be hard pushed to have been releasing so many older releases if we'd had to use more old stock in our Mackie Bay. But the sherry notes in that Mackie Bay certainly give it a little more depth, a bit more colour, but a bit more depth on the palate. And we're delighted that people have enjoyed it, and I think it surprises people when they try it that it is quite as young as it is. But it's worked, and I think people say, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to? We are going to put older ages in it, but are people going to enjoy it as much? So you've got to try. That's something that we'll have to look at because we're going to put a bit more older stock into it going forward, and we'll see what people's comments are. I don't think we're going to make a big song and dance about it. We'll just see what happens. I think my own personal view, it needs a bit more depth in it. But I love the freshness and the vibrancy
absolutely
of it, and it has a character all its own, and the sweet style of the spirit just helps it mature relatively quickly. But I think more importantly is the casks that we use, which are very good quality and mainly first fill. They're all first fill, so they give quite a big amount of character to the spirit maturing there at a relatively young age. So yes, it's been fortunate. Yes, we've been lucky that non-aged single malt sort of hit the market just at the right time for us. Macallan and others, they had to do a different way. They ran out of old whiskey, so they started doing non-aged. So it actually helped us massively in saying, this is actually not, this is okay now.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, well, no, I'm talking, 15 years ago, it wouldn't have worked. People were not ready for trying a new single malt, non-aged 3 or 4 year old.
Well, sure. I'd still remember your Anticipation release.
2 years old.
And Anticipation was magnificent.
Yeah.
And so, as much as everyone's going to drink according to their own personal palate, I love my Kilchoman young,
Yeah.
So if it's Anticipation into Macro Bay, I'm a happy camper.
Yeah.
Am I paying close attention as it's getting older? You did the club release at 12 years old, the end of last year. Got a bottle of that, thoroughly enjoyed that as well. But Kilchoman young is really my wheelhouse in Kilchoman bourbon. And so, I for me, you've done it right from the very beginning. And I don't want to ask you another economics question, but
I'm going to ask you another economics question.
when you came out the door and you were using first fill Buffalo Trace casks and other American bourbons, wasn't that an expensive way to do business?
Yeah, I mean, for us to buy a full container, 210 casks, it took us sort of 4 or 5 months to fill them.
Wow.
Yeah, it was expensive, but it was important as far as I'm concerned, having come from the industry, knowing that the cask plays a massive part, and if we get that wrong, then Kilchoman's image will be compromised. So it was important to get that right and invest heavily in our wood policy, and I think it's paid dividends.
I agree 100%, which is why I asked the question. That's spot on.
Was that a suggestion by Dr. Jim Swan? Is that something that came from you?
No, I think he was pretty adamant about how we should start the maturation, knowing that we wanted to release at a relatively young age. Initially, before we built the distillery, it was sort of maybe 5 years minimum time before we could release a single malt. But then it transpired that we could do it 3, and it was felt that, it's an expensive business producing whiskey and not having an income. So, in discussion with Jim, it was very much a question of, right, we'll fill everything into first fill bourbon and some sherries. And everything will go into bourbon and sherry, and that's what it did for the first 4 or 5 years. It went into bourbon and sherry. 80% bourbon and 20% sherry. Well, no, it was a bit actually 70-30. And then Jim was very keen on the balanced vatings, bourbon and sherry. I then wanted to just mix it up and do straight bourbon and straight sherry, and he didn't seem to have a problem with that. And we've just gone from there, really. Yeah, we were lucky that we had these contacts through Jim Swan from Bruffo Trace, who wouldn't supply us to start with.
They wouldn't? Okay.
They wanted to see us have a track record. They didn't know us, and even Jim couldn't persuade them the first year. So we only started getting cars from the end of 2006.
Okay.
Before that, we were buying from the Speyside.
Speyside, okay.
And sherry the same. We only... started buying from Miguel Martin in 2008.
Okay. That's a good history with Miguel, though. So 11 years.
And it's been good, and his casks have been great, and there's been pressure on both bourbon and sherry casks, empty casks, and the sherry is more difficult, certainly, but Miguel's got a good setup. So we're quite fortunate there. And I think the new distilleries are struggling with their supply of casks, not just getting consistent supply. I know that Buffalo Trace weren't allowing any new Scotch whisky distilleries to buy from them, maybe a year or two. Maybe they've opened the door now, I don't know. But I think it's quite important for all these distilleries to have a regular supply of casks to get the continuity. I think buying from the cooperage, Speyside, you could argue you're getting good casks, but they're all slightly different. You don't have... the provenance, the history of them particularly. You just get first fill. Yeah, you got some first fill, but they could be Jack Daniels, they could be Heaven Hill, they could be anywhere. And so you're going to get different styles coming from that. And I think, the public are now very well read, and there's a huge amount of information on social media. So you can't fool them anymore. And they want the information. They want to know what you've matured it in and how long for, and they now want to know all about your yeast variety, and your barley variety, and your yields, and your peating levels, and all these things. And and it's all to do with the fact that distilleries have opened their doors, because 30 years ago, well, probably maybe 40 years ago, everything was top secret. No distillery talked about anything they did behind the closed doors. And now, in 40 years, it's transformed into this wonderful tourist attraction that's bringing income to, these economically fragile areas of Scotland, which is which Islay has been, but no longer, just due to the whiskey tourism, really.
So I won't know until I play this back, but there's a good chance our listeners are going to be hearing all this steel work going on and banging and sawing. And so for our listeners, we're on Islay. This is during Vigil, and this is the Tuesday?
Yes, sir.
It's Tuesday, and your day is the Thursday. Being built, finalized building and started distilling in 2005. When did you start participating in the Vigil?
2004.
Oh, right.
We put up a marquee where the bottling warehouse is, and we just invited people to come along and to hear about this new distillery that was going to be built. Okay. Nothing had happened.
Yeah.
So that was 2004, and then we've done it every year since.
And so what were you expecting?
Well, we didn't have very many people.
Right.
We had some journalists and we had inquisitive people who wanted to hear about this mad Englishman who was coming to Ireland to build a distillery, thinking he'd fall flat on his face. And there weren't new distilleries being built. Arran was built in 95. Before that, you're going back to the 60s when one or two distilleries were built. So it was something that no one was particularly enthusiastic about.
Yeah.
I think they thought I was going completely out on a limb and was a bit nuts, and there were more than enough distilleries in Scotland.
Yeah.
And yes, that's an argument you could put to people saying, there are over 100 distilleries in Scotland. There are 7 on Islay. Why would you need another one? And yeah, they've got a point. I think I've proved the point, because now there are a huge number of distilleries in Scotland that have been built since I built Kilchoman and continue to be built. I'm glad we did when we did. It was hard work. It was a huge commitment. And yeah, I mean, I think you have to be a bit crazy to do it because of the cash required to do it, and then to hold your nerve when you don't know how the whiskey is going to mature, how quickly you can get your product to the market, how quick is it going to be successful, are the public going to be interested in it. I think what helped us hugely was the general groundswell of interest in single malt around the world, and it all happened at the time I was building the distillery, or just before. Independent bottlers set the trend, and they were the ones who made the public and the industry realised, single casks from single distilleries were quite interesting and different from what they churned out on a daily basis. And I think, I looked at that and saw an opening. You've got to be a bit mad, and yes, you've got to take a risk. I mean, sure enough, we could have lost everything. And the first 5 years were pretty hard work. We were constantly looking for more money. But I think you've got to go through those times to appreciate the good times. And we're working as hard as ever. We're not resting on our laurels, thinking we've done the job. And I think, I've got my 3 sons in the business, and I think that motivates you to continue the journey. So that's why we've embarked on this expansion.
Is there anything you would have done different? Just looking back?
I mean, I think there wasn't the same amount of professional support and help available to me when I started. So although Jim Swan was there, he's not an engineer. So he was the one who designed the kit, but then actually installing it and having the expertise around me then was lacking. So, and we cut corners, in simple things. With a boiler, we got a second-hand boiler. Well, pretty stupid, really, because, if you don't have a boiler that works, then you don't have a distillery that operates. So, simple things like that. Yeah, so we spent a lot of money that we could have saved. We would have done things differently. But I think, and it's interesting that when we were up and running and we were making a go of it, most new distilleries in Scotland came to see us. And I gave them lots of free advice on what not to do, because I think suddenly they all had someone to talk to, not just me. I mean, there were plenty of people who came out of the woodwork who became consultants, ex-distillery managers who'd retired and suddenly realised that there was a bit of consultancy work to be had if they helped new distilleries get up and running. So we didn't have that. We made lots of mistakes, and we spent a lot of money putting them right. But the new still house that we put in, we knew what we needed to do, and we've got the experience now to make sure it works properly, and we don't have to go back and refit things.
On the flip side of that, is there anything you look back on and you think, holy shit, we got that right from day one, and maybe that was unexpected, or maybe you took a chance? Or
I think locating it on the farm where we did, having a unique selling point, a point of difference has made a massive difference. But the biggest and most important decision that we made was undoubtedly locating it here on Islay. Scotland's a big place. Just building your distillery anywhere in Scotland won't cut it in the export market particularly. And I think you have to have a provenance, a tradition, a history of distilling. to really capture people's imagination. It might be a bit easier now, and that people are now prepared to experiment a bit more. But certainly, as far as I was concerned, Islay was the most important decision we made. And the main reason was that because of Islay's popularity in whiskey style and character. Small island off the west coast of Scotland, 7-8 distilleries, and 4 or 5 of those just brands that had done a massive job around the world. And then this little chap turns up and says he's going to build one on Islay, and people were fascinated because all the distilleries, apart from Bruichladdich, were owned by the big conglomerates. So when it came to finding distributors, every worthwhile importer distributor wants an Islay on in their portfolio. Well, they couldn't get it because most of them had their own distribution agreements in those markets. So, that was key for us. And I think locating it on a farm and having that point of difference has also been key, because more and more people are interested in the provenance and the history of a product, the traceability, going to a distillery and seeing the whole process from growing the barley right the way through. We're less corporate visitor attraction. It's a working farm. That's the way I like it. It doesn't suit a lot of people, but I think you get a different experience here than maybe some of the others. But there's room for all of us, and I think that's important. We wouldn't be sitting here doing what we're doing if the big guys hadn't done a pretty good job in promoting Scotch whisky around the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good. One last question before we have our very final question, if that's okay, if you have time.
Yep.
So the penultimate question, if you will.
Gosh.
So the Anthony Wills from 2004, do you think he would have conceived of where you are now?
Absolutely not. I thought it was a good idea. I thought there might be appeal for what we were doing, but I never imagined that we'd be, employing 35 people.
Wow.
And exporting to over 50 markets. No, I don't. No, not in my wildest dreams did I think that. Yes, I thought we had a chance of some success, but I didn't really have. I had never put a number on that, and that's where entrepreneurs are risk takers, and you see that there is a possibility of something working, and you don't listen to anybody in the financial world, because if you did, you wouldn't do it. And but now, everyone thinks it's a normal thing to build a distillery. It's very normal, and no one bats an eyelid that there might be another 2 or 3 built on Islay, and it's happening all over the world. Yeah. So we must have done something right. I'm not saying I'm a genius and then I came up with the idea, but I think that we were ahead of the game, and being ahead of the game has helped us hugely in establishing ourselves before everybody else came along and built a distillery. And I think that the ones that are building them now, or just starting to make spirit, the ones that will succeed are the ones that are in the trade already. They've been involved in the whiskey industry. They know the route to market, which I think is more important than people actually. They don't think about that so much, because I think. They think you build a distillery and you open the door and you put a sale sign up and you sell your whiskey, but it doesn't work like that. So I think there's going to be interesting times over the next for Scotch whiskey, because I know Scotch whiskey intimately and I don't know the rest of the world so well. But I think it's going to be more difficult to establish your new brand and your new distillery in a very overcrowded marketplace. We found it tough. And you get to, we've had 4, 5 or 6 years of steady growth, and then you've got to take it to the next level if you want to continue that path, which we do. And it's not easy. So, I think everyone thinks that Scotch whiskey, you just sort of go click your fingers and everything happens. Well, it bloody doesn't. And they're going to have a shock. Yeah. Because they think that they can just do a bit of PR and a bit of social media work, and then everyone's going to be crowding around them to get their whiskey. I think the issue is that, there's an overcrowded place there already. These specialist retailers or hotels or bars or whatever they are have a huge selection already. Yeah. And it's not just Scotch whiskey.
Right. Yeah.
It's spirits from all over the world. Yeah. And, everyone's seen the rise in gin, and rum now is making a big impact, tequila and mezcal and all these things. So whereas Scotch whiskey probably had a bit of a free run at it for a while, it doesn't anymore. Yeah. So let's see what happens. But we've established ourselves in a small way, and now we have to work doubly hard to continue that journey.
Yeah, we were having a similar conversation with Dave Broom about all these different categories of spirit, and it gets down to shelf space. There's only so many bottles, only so many types.
And consumers only have so many pennies in their pocket to spend. Right? Consumers are finite as well. So.
But I think consumers have changed their habits quite a lot over the last 10 or 15 years. And I think the key brands, the well-known key brands, are finding it harder. Mm-hmm. But there's still the ones that are flying the flag. I'm talking Scotch here, so they go into South America, or they go into China, or they go into Mexico, and they're just starting to drink whiskey, so they're going to be on the Johnny Walkers and the deluxe blends and all the rest. And for the next 5-10 years, that will happen, and then we'll be cruising in behind that, just getting a little slice of the action. And we've seen that happening in China, for instance, where for the last 15 years, everybody's been talking China up. This is a massive market out there, and it's going to be absolutely huge. Well, it didn't happen, and it's happening now for the big guys. I think it's really happening. I mean, and that's why Macallan and people have done what they have and invested 40 million or whatever they have. Wow. And Asia's a huge market for them, but China's clearly got massive potential. And, we're in there in a very small way. But everyone said, oh, well, you must be selling to China. Well, it wasn't on the radar as far as we're concerned, because it wasn't a mature enough market. But, I see massive growth around the world because of what the big guys are doing. So whereas you've got a mature European market, they've pulled out. They've gone off to Asia. They've gone to India. Well, India's very tough, so because of the tax regime. But China, massive. And then South America, Africa. And this is where we are hugely in debt to the big guys for doing all the bloody work and spending all the money. and then we can just sort of, sneak in.
Sneak in the back door.
So I don't know if I'm going to take a question out of your mouth, given that you were wrapping it up here. Given that we're talking about the future here, what's the thing you're most excited about for Kilchoman over the next 5, 10, 15, 25 years?
I think we're excited that we got the new still house in. We're excited that we're building a new visitor centre so we can really look after our customers and visitors in a way we haven't been able to up until now. I think they're hugely exciting times for a distillery like ourselves, having been around now for 14 years. And we'll continue this journey, and we need to be innovative. We need to keep in the public eye, so we just need to keep doing what we're doing and doing it well. I've got 3 sons who are going to be taking over the business, and really that's what's driven me to do what I've done. I probably wouldn't have invested so heavily in a new still house if I was on my own and the boys weren't involved. I think we've made a massive commitment. Any profit we've made plus more, and banks have helped support and to fund what we've done. But it's for the future growth of the business. So to double production is the right thing. I'm very happy and content that we've done that, because it now means we won't have to allocate into the markets. Now, we didn't want to be in a place like that, because in 3 or 4 years' time we would be, if we continued the growth we've got. So we've done it at the right time. We can now just carry on doing what we're doing, and hopefully people continue enjoying the whiskies that we're putting out there.
Terrific.
Brilliant.
We'll return to the good Anthony Wills in a little bit of time. We still have a misconception to get from him, which he covered a few different bases in his misconception as well, and all of it is well worth our time. So sincere thanks to Anthony for taking the time. Like we say, it was Fashiel. Everybody was busy. Setup was happening for their Thursday open day, when the weather was going to go from brilliant, bright sunshine and a clear blue sky to absolutely pissing down. Exactly. And as much as you and I were off the island by the Thursday, we saw the photos, and it was as wet as the weatherman had forecast.
Yeah, this time the weatherman had gotten it right. But I just want to echo what you said, an echo of thanks to Anthony, because that was a busy day for him. He was running around, putting out fires, just, making sure things were getting done, entertaining Dave Broom, who happened to be with him that day, who we got to interview, which is really good. And that's going to be our next episode. I'm very excited about that as well. But there was no reason. He did not need to put an hour of his time aside for us. And the fact that he did that and did so in a relaxed manner was, I can't thank him enough. So I will
tremendous.
Thank him. Yeah.
So with that said, we're going to bypass the Paperboy this week. You dropped a very quick little note in the very beginning of the episode. I will drop in a very quick little note here that the MGP, the batch that we released online, has been shipping on a week-by-week basis, 100 bottles a week.
Lovely job.
And by the time this episode goes live, we should be getting close to being done with all the shipping of that. Be sure, whether you did or did not secure one of the online bottles, also go in search of the retail bottling. I've been telling a lot of people about the second batch that went to retail, and it's well worth putting them side by side. I've actually led a tasting locally where we put them side by side, and it's remarkable to see what it'll do at 54%, what it'll do at 51%, how the slight variation in the cask makeup will affect some of the flavors in the finished product.
Did people find it? I haven't.
Oh, yes.
It's been a while since I did the side by side. But people were finding the big differences, right? Yeah. Good.
Yeah. And I maybe wouldn't go with big differences, but I think they're quite big in their own subtle way, where they don't seem like interchangeable whiskeys.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to have two whiskeys that are have their own personalities. Obviously, just like bourbon, you can say bourbon is delicious, and they can be so different. At the end of the day, it's still bourbon. And I think the same rings true here. It's like, yes, these are very different light whiskeys. At the end of the day, it's light whiskey, and they're going to fit within a certain box, but there's so much room within that box to find lots of, points of difference.
Correct. 100%.
Yeah, cool.
So there you go. So very quick, news comment there, not even worth waking the Paperboy for, but we do have a lengthy email that we did want to take a little moment to unpack.
Did you want me to read that, or would you like to read it?
I have to read it off my phone, and right now you are on my phone, so it's going to have to be.
Okay. So this is from Elijah. Is it Ammon? Ammon. I think it's Ammon.
We're back to breaking up the syllables in people's names. This is how we...
then it's Ammon. I think that's it. I think Elijah will be like, yep, that's how you pronounce my last name. Thank you. So full disclosure, Elijah is with JVS Imports, who is our California distributor. But he is a whiskey guy, and he's voracious in his appetite is a voracious one when it comes to learning more and more about whiskey.
Yeah, it was perfect timing, and I saw him in January, met him for the very first time, and spent a day working with him in Orange County. And really energetic, young, go-getting kind of guy who was thirsty for Scotch information and whiskey information. And I said, "Oh yeah, Josh and I have a podcast." He said, "What's it called?" And he subscribed then and there. And then this email just came in somewhat recently, and he said, "I did it. I'm all caught up. It only took me 4 months, but I'm caught up." And actually, in 4 weeks, I'll be seeing him again in Orange County.
Nice.
Which I think will be a couple of weeks after this episode. It'll be 4 weeks. Shit, where are we? When's this go live? Please remove this nonsense.
No, I'm keeping this in because
you're not.
Because you and I, in the last episode, you really talked about how important it was to make sure that people understand how many weeks from the dropping of the episode. Like, I think this is very important for our listeners.
Well, you were going
know.
backwards. You were going backwards and wasting everybody's time. I'm going forwards and wasting everybody's time.
We all get to the same place, Jason.
So I guess I'll see him 2 weeks after this episode drops.
There are many paths to God, as they say, Jason.
Elijah's whiskey Jedi. He's not God.
His name's Elijah, though. I'll tell you, every Passover,
I do. I leave the door open for him.
Leave the door open. I got a chair for him. I put a little wine in his cup. I put some water in Miriam's cup. And I tell you, Elijah has yet to come to my house.
It's a long way to come from Orange County for a cheap glass of wine. Pour whiskey, he'll be there.
I put some 1981 Pomerol into the glass. I'm like, if that's not going to bring anybody to my house, it's like either that or maybe I bring like the milkshakes. But if I do a milkshake,
I knew where that was going. I knew exactly where that was going. I had milkshake pop into my head 15 seconds before you started going that direction.
Am I that predictable?
Oh my God.
Am I that predictable? Or you're like, I know how funny Joshua is, and I know where he's going to go.
Let's go with predictable.
So you know how funny I am. Okay, good. I'm predictably funny.
Oh, man. Okay, so what does Elijah say in his email?
He says, hello, Jason and Joshua, or Joshua and Jason.
Okay.
Yeah, he's covering his bases, and I appreciate that. He says,
see, he's a smart man. I told you this.
And the way he opens it up is actually a nice little, without him knowing, a nice little callback to our episode with David Turner when we were talking about people calling into radio shows. He says, short-time listener, first time reaching out. I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to your podcast over the past few months. Started exactly 4 months ago, and I just caught up. You made my commutes around SoCal a lot less stressful. Oh, I can't even imagine driving around Southern California. Like, you want to drive 10 feet, and why would you drive 10 feet? Because you can, but it will take you 7 hours to get there.
Aaron Krause knows what we're talking about.
You know what? I saw him the other day.
I know you did.
Yeah, anyway.
I saw his photos.
Okay. He says, as someone who not only reps Single Cask Nation to my various accounts, but is also a huge fan of the whiskeys you put out, I'd like to share a list of questions, comments, and reflections that I've compiled over the past 3 seasons. He said, feel free to answer any question on or off the air. So the first question, and he says, this is first and the most important question. How did you get Chris Udy to sit down and talk to you and pay attention? Tell me the secret. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think we made a secret of it in the episode where you had been at Kilchoman for the day. There had been some drams. You were on a couch late at night with more Kilchoman drams. I think the alcohol had got him slowed down to a point where he would actually stay in one place for more than 30 seconds.
Well, I think the other trick to it is we had this conversation well past midnight.
Yep.
Right? So, A, he needs to have some whiskey in him, and B, he needs to be tuckered out from a full day of just stuff. So get him tired, get him drunk. Wow, this sounds like a terrible instructional. If you want, yeah.
I was going to say this is exactly how we raised our kids. You get them out of the house early, you get them running around, you get them tuckered, you get them home and get them fed and watered, and then you get them in their bed.
And if worse comes to worse, give them some Benadryl. That'll put them out.
Yeah, right. So there you go. Yeah, keep the Benadryl for when Chris Udy isn't sitting there listening to you.
Yeah. And then his next question, he says, you guys got to try the Tamdhu 50-year-old and shared nothing about the experience. Do you care to share what it was like?
Nope. Next question.
Really? You don't?
Nope. Yeah. We said everything we needed to say about it. Next.
Wow, you heard it, Elijah. Remember this when Jason is with you 4 weeks. Well, depending on when this airs, it's gonna be 2.
What's the next question?
He says, "Oh my gosh, this isn't a question. This is just a statement that warms my heart. It warms my heart. It fills my soul with gladness." He says,
It's about Joshua. We know this much.
It starts off, it says, "Joshua, comma, I'd like to experience a New Haven pizza tour with you one day."
Next question.
God bless you. New Haven Pizza is where it's at. And you need to come over. We'll have good whiskey and good pizza, and you'll be in heaven. Heaven, you're in heaven. Oh, can I say something really quickly?
It's your podcast as much as it is mine.
So, as you know, in our last podcast, a song had come to mind, and I sang it. And it was One Step Over the Line. I thought it was One Step Over the Line, but the lyric is actually, "One toke over the line, Lord Jesus, one toke over the line." And I'd said one step, but I got the cadence correct. I got the key correct. I messed up on a word, and I needed to bare my soul there and let you know that instead of toke, I said step. But I had kids in mind. I didn't want the kids to hear about people smoking drugs.
If we're going to start doing corrections every episode, we're going to have to create a new podcast.
Corrections with Jason Johnston Yellen.
Okay, next.
Okay. It says, "I've recently acquired a Cadden Heads 1979 18-year-old Talisker, quote, sherry wood that I bought from a collector. Now, I've had sherry matured whiskey that has a slight stinky sulfuric note to it, but this is an entirely different animal. This is like heavy, dank sulfur, peat, red wine vinegar, and sea salt all jam-packed into this whiskey. I've heard people say that they used to burn sulfur candles in casks. Can you guys talk more about that sulfur note that you get out of some old sherry cask matured whiskeys?
Yeah, I think this fits lovely, given that we talked a little bit about sherry maturation with Anthony in today's episode, and we're starting to see that pendulum swing away from some of the big sherry towards some crisper bourbon maturation. However, you and I have talked about it very recently, about the German market being known for those nice big farty sherry whiskies. And I think some of it is coming from, they're still continuing to use sherry candles in some instances.
Sulfur candles.
Sorry?
You said sherry candles. They're sulfur candles.
Oh, yeah. Imagine what a sherry candle would smell like, though, now that I've had that idea. Yes, so the sulfur candles are still in use. Some producers are reaching out to say, please ship these without the use of sulfur candles.
Which gets tricky. I mean, part of the reason why sherry producers want to use the candle is, especially in the summertime, if they're dealing with shipping casks in the summer, you're dealing with extreme temperatures in Jerez. You're looking at 40 degrees Celsius, and they're using these sulfur candles to ensure that, bacteria doesn't grow, things like that.
Bacterial growth. Yeah.
Bacterial growth, and just to ensure that the cask doesn't get tainted. However, those sulfur candles can potentially taint the cask a little bit and give you, increase the amount of sulfur that you're going to get from a sherry cask.
Yeah, and I think that's the trade-off for any producer, is you want to prevent the sherry in the cask from taking on some of that vinegar note that Elijah's talking about there in the Talisker that he's got. at the same time, you know if you put a sulfur candle in there, you are going to get some, even if it's a distant echo, you're going to get some sulfur in there. So are you better with the devil you know than the devil you don't? Are you better taking the risk or guarding against it? I think Elijah gets to see what happens when you guard against it and it goes wrong in transport. And then at the end of the day, it becomes a talking piece, right? Everything that happens to a whiskey that ends up in the bottle becomes a talking piece, whether you love it, you hate it, whether it needs more oxidation, and that, Elijah doesn't say how long he's had the bottle open, but my guess would be as he's got that bottle open and as he drinks through it, he'll find some of the more negative qualities rounding out and maybe receding a little. They may very well always be there. Yeah. But they may take a breath. Take more of a back seat.
Oxygen is surely your friend in this case. One suggestion that I have, and this is for Elijah, this is for anyone really. If you have a sherried whiskey that is just coming off a bit too sulfury for you, you can take like a wine aerator and put your whiskey through a wine aerator a few times and then put it back into your bottle. And I've done that with a couple whiskeys, and it's not a cure-all. It doesn't take away 100% of it, but it definitely helps subdue that note. It helps to cancel it out a little bit. So, and you can find a good aerator for $15-$20. So that's a suggestion for him and anyone who wants to kind of tame the beast, as you will. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, next. We're racing through these.
This is good. I like this. And now
it might involve not answering some more things, but here we are.
I don't know if you want to answer this. Well, we have an answer to it, and it's not the answer that he or anyone's going to like. He says,
"Oh boy,
when is the Worm Tub episode coming out?"
Oh yep, still working on it. Next.
Let's talk to it a little bit. We were meant to have a conversation with Lee Watson of Springbank.
We did mention that in a podcast.
Yep, but this was during the Campbelltown Fest, and even though we were lucky to get David Turner and Anthony Wills during Vigil, you can't always be lucky. Lee was a very busy person, and it just didn't work out. So we were hoping we have Malcolm Waring, who handles Bal Blair and Old Pulteney, like that range, and we wanted to get at least Lee, and then we can work from there. But we need at least one more interview. So once we clinch that, we're going to build and then post our Worm Tubs episode.
Yeah, I'm excited for it when it happens, but I want more people than you want. I want a range of people's voices, but it'll come. All good things come to those who wait.
What if it ends up being just like a shit episode?
What if we never post it?
What if today's episode is the last episode? Like, end on a high note, and we never released it after having promised it for 3 years straight.
Given that we're the guys who mothballed Whiskey Jubilee without really any notice, we should probably be careful in what we say. Might be the last time we ever do anything on a given day.
We notified people after we mothballed it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Point, meet Joshua.
All right, his final thing. He says, podcast idea. And we've gotten some podcast ideas from people like James Foster has given us some ideas that have been very good.
Yep. Michael Nolan
as well. So this one's from Elijah, and it says, could you possibly interview some younger gentlemen or ladies in the industry? I started working at JVS when I was 24, now 26. Most of my whiskey drinking friends, clubs, and tastings are people that are like 15 to 20 years older than I am. I feel like it's a misconception that old rich men drink scotch. It would be nice to know if there are some other young influencers out there just as passionate about whiskey. You brought up an excellent point. We spoke with Matthew Hoffman, who's been on this podcast 4 times now, and I don't think he's 30 yet. So
yeah, I don't think he's 30 yet either. So we've got him going. There's a chap, Alan Grablauskas, who's head of the beverage program at Oyamel in DC, and I just interviewed him, and he's not 30 yet.
Okay.
It's kind of awkward because it's not like we really go around asking people their birth. Well, we do ask people their birth years when they seem to be around 73, 74, like you and me. We don't tend to ask people their birth years when they tend to be mid to late 80s, and certainly not if there's a 90 involved. Oof. Gosh, that would just make me feel far too old. So, oh my goodness. I'm just trying to think, actually. If Elijah is 26, he was born in the 1990s.
Shut the front door.
Wow. Yeah, this is why we don't do it, Elijah. It just makes us depressed. And us being depressed doesn't make for good episodes.
What year was it 26 years ago? Is that 93?
Yeah.
I graduated high school in 91. God damn it.
Yep. Yeah, I graduated in 92.
We're not going to interview any young people.
I was at university the first time when Elijah was born.
Aww.
So anyway, the point is well taken, though. We are always looking for younger men and women in the industry with whom to speak. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a great point, though.
It is a good point. Yeah, it's all about diversity. And the good news is, in the whiskey world, we're seeing an increasing amount of diversity. But you're still dealing with some older white folk out there who typically tend to be men. But you know, we're just looking to talk to good, interesting people that also want to talk to us. So, but we will
interviewed Jen Nickerson. She must be young.
Yeah, she is young. Well, younger than a lot of people are younger than we are. She must be young. How old is that whippersnapper?
Yeah, she's but a bairn.
All right. So he ends off his email saying, "Thank you guys for everything you do. I've learned so much with your podcast, and I'm extremely proud to rep Single Cask Nation. Keep up the great work." Thank you, Elijah, for your question. Thank you for being a good salesman for Single Cask Nation and a good ambassador for our brand as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely fell in love with him when I first met him in January. So enthusiastic and passionate and looking to learn so much.
Yeah.
And really loves what we do with the brand and really represents it as if it's his own. And we can't ask for more than that. He's also the chap that when people say to me, "Hey, where can I get Single Cask Nation shipped to me, or where can I get it, near LA?" He's the guy I text.
Beautiful.
Elijah, give me some information, and he does right away because he's a busy boy. He's a workaholic.
Yeah. Well, so, Elijah,
thanks for the email, Elijah.
Yeah, and I
look forward to seeing you and working with you very soon.
And I hope to see you sometime in California if Jason ever allows me there. And
I believe you saw him last September in San Francisco.
I did, but but that was different.
I just want the listenership to know that you did a stealth trip to San Francisco when Jason continually gets shit for keeping you out of California.
Well, the point that I'm trying to make here is whether it's on his side of the country or during Passover on my side of the country, there's always a chair and a glass of wine ready for him.
Trouble is, when he visits you for Passover, you can't take him for pizza.
No, but I make incredible matzah pizza.
Said nobody ever.
Says my daughters love my matzah pizza. It is a tradition in this house, so you could suck
Let me just say, we also have the tradition of matzah pizza.
Yeah. Nobody
said in their life, "I make great matzah pizza."
That is wrong because I just said it.
I'm glad I can bookend this episode with nobody being called Martin and nobody in the nation being called Martin and nobody claiming that they make excellent matzah pizza. Today's episode has been brought to you by the letter M and the holiday Passover. Should we head on down the Sesame Street here, mate?
Let's ease on down the road, as they would say.
That's exactly it.
He's on down the road. Doodle-doo-doodle-doo. He's on down.
Honestly, I don't think you can think about Sesame Street without thinking about The Wiz.
Was there a connection? I don't remember. I remember seeing it as a little kid and loving it, loving the songs.
Yeah, I think they're the same.
I don't know if that's correct. Listeners, questions at One Nation Under Whiskey. If Jason. Oh, speaking of which.
Yes.
So please email us if Jason is wrong about anything, but also if you have a question like Elijah did, and you want to reach out to us. We haven't said this in a while. Please reach out to us. You can email us questions at onenationunderwhiskey.com. You could tweet at us at One Nation Whiskey. You can send us a Facebook message. Just go to facebook.com and search for One Nation Under Whiskey, and you can send us a message there. Or I guess you could even Instagram us at One Nation Under Whiskey, and you can send us a message that way. And if you like our podcast, which we hope you do, if you would be so kind as to go to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. 4-star is acceptable as well. And if you want to use some nice words and say nice things, we would be forever grateful.
I do wonder about the difference between a 4-star and a 5-star. Like when I read a review on Amazon, the person's like, "This was great. It did everything I wanted it to. 4 stars." I'm kind of like, really? It needed to surprise you in some way? Like it's a butter dish. Like, how can a butter dish surprise you? Like, well, that's an exacting standard.
It's not too different from some reviews of whiskeys you see where they say, "Oh, perfect, flawless, impeccable, crystalline, 89 points." Like, well, wait a second. That's 0 to 100. Perfect, crystalline, immaculate. These all mean 100. They don't mean 89.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Some people, Josh, just have exacting standards. So save yourself the internal deliberation. If you're thinking, is it 4, is it 5? Just give it 5 stars.
It's 5. Yeah.
Just give it 5.
When in doubt, it's 5 stars.
Just make life easy on yourself. So, okay, well, I'm off back to summer living.
Well, we have to hand the microphone back over to Anthony.
Oh yeah. Well, let's do this then. Let's just say our goodbyes, hand it to him, and call it a day.
Oh, you want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. So thanks to Anthony again. We'll leave you in his capable hands. Thanks to Joshua for the editing. Thanks to me for making time in my hectic summer schedule. Thanks to my wife. Okay, it's turned into an Emmy Award-winning Emmy Award. It always comes back to Matthew Reese, that man trying to usurp my business position.
See, you could have kept.
You got to watch the Welsh. You got to keep an eye on them.
I know. If you kept on going on with your thank yous, I was going to start fading the music in, just like come on, get the big, the hook cane that pulls you off of the stage.
I'm actually.
Oh,
these are my last words. I'm actually going to go and open a beer called Kai Goes to the Beach, which is from a brewery owned and operated by one of our nation members, David Hartogs, and his brother.
Where did he get the name Kai from? Was that inspiration from you and your son?
No, it's the brewer's son. It's called Kai. And Kai in Hawaiian means water or ocean.
Oh, okay.
And Kai in our life, my eldest son, we went with Kai, but didn't want him called Chai his entire life. And so we dropped the H for his normal version of his name. Mm-hmm. And so he's a CAI, and this one that I will be drinking is a KAI.
All right. I'll tell you, those Rocket Frog beers, what David Hartogs is doing, and he's been a Nation member since the very beginning, and you and I have been speaking to him since the beginning, and I remember him coming to me saying, we're working on our business plan for the brewery, looking to really make this happen, and just to know about this project before it was, when it was just thoughts around him and his brother's heads, and now here it is, and he's got crazy good beers coming out. I think they're still only available in Virginia, but I got some in sneaky ways here and there.
Yeah, this is a pink guava goza.
Fuck yes.
And it's going to be perfect for this summer's day in Virginia. So, I'm all out of words, and I'm all ready to get some beer down my gullet.
I'm all out of words. I'm so lost without you. Do, 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 do.
I think you get lots of weird questions, actually. But I think it's moved on a lot. I think, the colour from the whiskey, people weren't really that familiar with, they'd never really thought about it being clear when it comes out from the still, and that's the colour's natural. Because they've been told that a lot of caramel's added to the standard bottlings.
Okay.
And the colour comes from the caramel. So, yeah, I've had those odd questions, and the floor maltings is something that people really don't understand at all.
Okay.
They tend not to. They think that you take the barley and you just chuck it up on the floor and peat it. They don't realise you have to actually break the dormancy and to germinate it and all the rest. So there's some interesting things, but that people come up with, and the water is the other thing.
Okay.
So it's peaty in colour, so they think it's going to taste peaty, but it doesn't taste peaty.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you hear people talk about the peatiness from the whiskey comes from the water that they use, and not from the way that you actually peat your malt in barley.
That's a good point. I remember hearing people talk about Bunnahabhain that way.
Yeah.
They've got really dark peaty water, so that's where the peat comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that's probably more common than anything about the colour of the water, and therefore it's very peaty. Don't drink it. It is very medicinal.
Have you ever had anything really weird where you've just kind of looked at the person and said, I've no idea in God's green earth how you could have come up with that?
I think the issue now is that there is so much information out there that you probably do your homework before you arrive. If you're that way inclined, you do your homework before you arrive. So 15, 20 years ago, or 20 years ago now, you didn't have that to hand. So I think you got more obscure questions, or ones you looked at the person and wondered what they were talking about. But I don't think that happens nearly as much as it used to, because you can just go press a button, Google it, can't you?
Interesting. So if you're the type of person who would ask a question at a tasting, you're the type of person who would have researched it before you got there. You wouldn't just jump into some.
I try. Well, me personally.
No. For a consumer coming to your tasting,
I definitely think that most consumers that come to distilleries now, they're there because they have a love of that whiskey. They might well be coming for the first time, but they know whiskey in general, and they don't have such a. They know more about it than you imagine. And 20 years ago, it would have been completely different. I'm not saying that that's a general norm, but on the whole, people going on tours here have a basic knowledge. But the floor maltings is something that they don't really understand because they don't see it. You don't see it. You go into a distillery and you see the distills, and then you go into the warehouse and you might get to see the cask, but you don't see the front end because the front end is not important to a lot of distilleries. So that's important for us because it showcases something that's different, and people are fascinated by it.
Yeah, that's great.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks a million for your time.
Really
and even more than your time, your honesty. You're very candid, and that means the world to us, and sharing that with our listeners will be fantastic. So thank you, sir.
Good. No, it's a pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, sir.
Boom. Easy.
Says you. Don't know how much effort that took. I'm exhausted already.
I feel awake. I feel alive after having done that.
Right.
It's like liftoff.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I played Delma Space Oddity
Oh yeah.
the other day. She loves David Bowie. She specifically loves the Hunky Dory album, and
A horse and buggy just went past the front door.
fucking Mennonites every time.
Dog fucking hates them.
So yeah, she loves Hunky Dory. She really likes the Ziggy Stardust album. So I decided to play her Space Oddity, which is a very different album than those. But the song, I love the song, and I thought she would dig it. And she was like, "Oh, that was a long song." I don't know why I just got into saying that. Is there a reason I started talking about David Bowie? because he does the countdown in the song. While he's singing, there's the 10, 9, 8. Yeah.
I just thought it was a long story to get to her saying, that was a long song.
It is a long song. She's not wrong.
She's not wrong.
She's not wrong. You're not wrong,
Just an
Walter. We both got there. Okay. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, my kids are going to be home from the garden soon, but
Okay, cool.
they're going on to game time, but there'll be some break. Just like you had in the beginning, I'll have it in the middle.
Yeah, okay.